That was lovely, wasn't it? What an exciting time. So now that you've got an idea of what the hell I'm going to be talking about today, let's get to talking about it, all right? Shall we? In the last couple of years, the internet has become incredibly sex negative. But in case you're confused about why, I want to tell you from my point of view as someone who has not only been an dangerously chronically online person for my entire life, pretty much. I mean, I had a computer in my bedroom with internet access in the mid-90s when I was under 10 years old. I have grown up on the internet. I started learning how to code HTML when I was also about 9 or 10 years old. So I'm a child of the internet, okay? I know it very well. It has not always been this sex negative. This is a more recent development. And what I want everyone to understand, because this is very important, it's not just a random vibe shift. And it's not even an organic vibe shift. This is the result of years of online censorship, years of moral panic, and a lot of algorithmic manipulation done to us by big tech companies and, as you'll see as well, that I'll be discussing, by payment processors, credit card companies like Visa and MasterCard. I want to take all of this and relate it to what I've started to call OnlyFans burnout. Because this era that we're in, it's like we've culturally reached a saturation point with OnlyFans creators, because there's, so many OnlyFans creators. Kind of the only strategy at this point to be a successful OnlyFans creator is to go viral. So we're in an era where there's a ton, it seems like everyone's an OnlyFans creator. The only way to make a living, if it's like your main source of income, is to rely on going viral constantly. And as a result, public opinion, especially among younger internet users, like people in their 20s and Gen Z, seems to be increasingly against porn, against sex, like as a concept, including in all media, not just porn, but even like sex scenes in movies. And of course, along with all that, anti-OnlyFans, against OF creators. Let's talk about the vibe shift. How did Gen Z, how did folks that are like 10 to 15 years younger than me become so sex negative? I'll be honest. I had a really hard time understanding this shift for a while, but I see the origins of it. I'm starting to connect the dots, and as I'm connecting the dots, I'm finding that this isn't actually super surprising as a development. I mean, this isn't really what I wanted, but if I'm just looking at the patterns that have developed over the last 8 years or so, this I could have predicted this. And in fact, I actually have been predicting it for at least the last 3 to 4 years. Ever since the big OF scare in 2021 happened. That was the OF scare was when OF said they were going to ban adult content on the platform. And then 6 days later or something, they reversed course and said, no, never mind. We're not going to do that. But that for me was the big turning point where I realized the direction of this particular direction of this kind of attempts to censor things and for people to call for things like OnlyFans and Thorne to be censored and banned, this is just going to continue to get worse. And here we are. Not only are we seeing a lot of hate for OF creators, we're seeing, obviously, across our culture here in the United States of America, the rise of celibacy influencers, including, the trad wife stuff on TikTok, no fat bros, MRAs, the manosphere podcasters, the Andrew Tates of the world, the Joe Rogans of the world. Although Joe Rogan he's a more of a mixed bag, but I still put him in there with the manosphere guys, because even if he isn't super hardcore, like anti-sex, anti-corn, he regularly platforms people who are. And I don't love that. I don't really love anything that he does, but yeah. And of course, you've got just the anti-corn TikTokers, like the video I recently put up on my OF talking about the WTF do you do now relationship coach on TikTok, who is weirdly related to the Collective Shout Australian nonprofit that took down all the games from Itch and Steam. So we've got a lot of viral anti-corn TikTokers who create content just exclusively talking about how, like, if you're dating someone and they watch corn, that's somehow completely intolerable and unacceptable and you should dump them, things like that. We're also seeing increasingly a lot of critiques of OF content creators that are wrapped up in, honestly, I think, concern trolling kinds of language, and criticizing OF creators for faking that their work is empowering, and also couching that within other criticisms of OF, because I talk about this all the time. I talk about how that's my job and I would like it to remain legal and I don't like the way that it's being attacked. And then inevitably, whenever I say things like that on my public platforms, I met with a lot of commentary by people who have really completely fallen into this narrative of, like, age verification being the best thing. And they wield that against me by being like, oh, well, you're just out for your own bottom line. You don't care about protecting kids. So, yeah. Ultimately, all of this is a moral panic. I keep saying this. I feel like a broken record. I'm going to keep saying it because it's going to keep being true. So one of the things that's most concerning about this moral panic is the way that it's been aestheticized in culture, and increasingly so in the last couple of years. Content that looks progressive, content creators who are exclusively shilling, like, anti-corn, sex negative information, but they make it look progressive. They couch it in language used by, like, internet feminists. But it, in fact, at the end of the day, what it's mainly doing is just reinforcing old attitudes, like 1980s Reagan era attitudes about chastity and moral panic around freedom of sexual self-expression and just straight up slut shaming, honestly. So that's all pretty gross, It's just the same old, but it's just kind of gotten a rebrand. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks that are participating in this, they don't really have the historical context to understand how none of this is new. We are literally culturally in America right now, and not just America, but plenty of other places. I mean, the UK just passed their essentially just, countrywide age verification law that applies to the entire internet. Just a crazy amount of censorship of not just actual adult media, but things that aren't even specifically for adults. Like, you have to scan your face and upload an ID if you want to be able to read the r/menstruation subreddit if you're a minor. So apparently UK lawmakers aren't aware that women who are under 18 years old, that teenage girls menstruate. So sorry to all the teen girls in the UK who are unable to access information about their own body, their own biology, and their own health. I can't really think of a better term for this, so I'm just calling it OnlyFans burnout because it's the best term I can think of for it. But as opposed to, like, the burnout that a worker would experience from not taking enough time off. I am referring to this is a like cultural level of burnout resulting from oversaturation of viral content creators promoting their content on like OnlyFans, Fansly, etc. It is the audience that is burned out. The novelty has worn off. Creators are, feeling increasingly commodified and memeified. Nothing really seems that original anymore. There's a lot of copycat content creators. And, I'm not really talking necessarily about the creator side of what burnout feels like in this talk today, but I do also want to mention that, like, yes, this does also pertain to the burnout of creators themselves, because you can ask anyone that does OnlyFans as their full-time job. We don't like the constant pressure to have to go viral. Nobody wanted it to be this way. We do not like it, and we frankly don't enjoy it. Even the people that you see going viral over and over again who seem like, they're just so good at it, they've totally got the formula figured out, I guarantee you they would rather not have to function that way. The reason that this is how things are now is because we are all so censored that the only way to maintain a business is to go viral over and over again. Literally, organic reach is impossible. It has been made impossible because of censorship and laws that restrict what online creators are allowed to do. Essentially, when everyone is trying to be a viral creator, nobody is special anymore, and that's literally by design. This is the censorship working as it's designed to work. It's doing the job that it's intended to do. Let's take Bonnie Blue and Annie Knight, two OF creators that go repeatedly viral, as examples. Now I've got another little compilation I want to play for you real quick.
I am going to do a world record of 1,000 men in 24 hours.
What I've gone most viral for is making content with barely legal 18-year-olds.
Is what I spent in a day as a millionaire. I started off the day at Cartier. It was my birthday, so I bought myself a ring and a bracelet, and this cost me $4,003.
I've been doing OF now since 2020. I was posting and stuff, but I wasn't 100% consistent. I was, sleeping until like 9 a.m. And so I was making like 20K a month, which I know is a lot. But these days you would not make that by doing fuck all. It's a super oversaturated market. So when it got to like early 2023, I really realized that there were so many girls in the industry now, and it was just so much harder to compete and to stand out. Other girls were so much hotter than me and had much better bodies, and I was trying to copy what they were doing, and it obviously wasn't working.
We just broke the link record with the youngest link of the century. $1 million in a couple hours. I've been doubting me for 7 years. You can hate on me all you want. You can't say Lil Tay ain't winning. Oh yeah, and thank you to all my supporters who have pre-ordered since 2018 or whenever you did.
This is not a new thing, okay? In fact, let's go back in time. Let's go back about 5 years in time. Bella Thorne becomes the first to earn $1 million in a day on OnlyFans. This was in August 2020, 5 years ago. If you don't remember this, she was the first to break the website. She earned $1 million in less than 24 hours. Literally, so she got so many chargebacks because she set her rate at $20 a month, and like pretty much all of the content that she was posting in the feed was kind of like viral bait. Like, she wasn't actually posting full nudes. It was like bikini photos. It was stuff that you could have seen just on her regular Instagram. So a bunch of people paid $20 within that first 24 hours. She made $1 million. She broke the website because she went so viral, and so many people were pissed that they didn't get the nudes they like were expecting to get, because already by this point in 2020, OnlyFans was synonymous with porn. So people were like, oh, I'm going to see her fully naked. I'm going to see her like diddling herself. And she got a bunch of chargebacks. And if you don't know what a chargeback is, it's where essentially someone pays for something with their credit card. Like a chargeback can be fraudulent or it can be valid. A valid chargeback is like someone stole your credit card and you know, to get rid of the charges, you then report it as fraudulent to your credit card company. Now, a chargeback can also be fraudulent, meaning like you did actually buy the thing and then you regretted the purchase. And instead of trying to get your money back the right way from the actual vendor and get a refund, you just report it as a chargeback. So she got a bunch of people who had subbed to her OnlyFans reporting chargebacks, and it caused the OnlyFans system to break. They like had to temporarily completely halt payouts for most of the creators on the platform. So a bunch of smaller creators that rely on like getting deposits weekly were just locked out of getting their money deposited because OF was like, no, we have to reassess the way that the payouts work because this one person completely broke the system by going so viral and resulting in like literally, I don't even know how many, but I assume like thousands and thousands of chargebacks. Hey guys, editor Siri here, and I want to talk more about chargebacks because as I'm editing this, I realize, wow, I can't believe I didn't actually get around to like kind of the main note for people to be aware of about chargebacks. So I'm going to insert this in right after I talked about Bella Thorne because, again, one of the things that her launch did that effed up the platform so bad was the amount of chargebacks she got. So in the like payout area in your dashboard as an OnlyFans creator where you can see like all your stats from the money you make and everything, there's a statistic in there called the chargeback ratio. And it even tells you that the chargeback ratio that you need to stay below the threshold is 1%. So if you have a chargeback ratio that exceeds 1%, you're very likely to just get your account banned from OnlyFans. And OnlyFans does this to protect their business because when an individual creator is getting a lot of chargebacks, that means two things. One, it's likely that they're doing some sort of dishonest business practice because a higher chargeback ratio means you have a lot of unsatisfied fans. That's the most likely option because the other reason that people would do chargebacks if it's like for a legitimate reason is because their credit card got stolen and they're reporting an actual fraudulent charge. But it is a common thing in Thorne, unfortunately, for people to do fake chargebacks, essentially. Like they did actively make the purchase. They were of sound mind when they did it. And then after the fact, they go, no, you know what? Never mind. I don't actually want to have to pay for this. So they'll do a chargeback. So a high chargeback ratio looks bad for the creator because it makes the platform question whether they're doing business honestly. And two, the chargeback ratio affects the platform itself. That is essentially going to tie into like the payment processing fees that they have to pay to the processors like MasterCard and Visa. So a higher chargeback ratio for a platform is going to affect their relationship with their payment processors. And if they are getting just too many chargebacks, it makes them look like an even higher risk business, and they're going to honestly be in danger of losing their payment processing capability altogether or being charged much higher processing fees. And nobody wants that. The processing fees for adult-oriented businesses are already sky high. We already pay usually at least twice as much as any average business. Most businesses pay processing fees of like 2.5%. Adult businesses frequently pay between 5 and I've even seen some as high as 10%. That's per transaction. That's the cost of doing business and having a merchant account with a payment processor if you're in the adult industry. So chargebacks are bad. We want as few of them as possible. And since I'm talking about this, and I'm sure some of you are curious, I'll tell you my chargeback ratio, okay? I launched my OnlyFans account in July 2019, and my chargeback ratio, if I look at the entire history of my account since it began, my chargeback ratio is currently at 0.08%, which is very low. That's very good. That translates to, hold on, I haven't actually like look at the tab. So in terms of dollar amount, the dollar amount that has been charged back over the the entirety of my OnlyFans account existing is just over $12,000. It's like $12,000 and some change. And I do business honestly. Like, I don't misrepresent PPV content that people unlock. And when I sell custom content, I deliver it as described. Sometimes I might run a little late on delivery, but I'm always like really communicative if that's the case. So the fact that I've even had $12,000 worth of chargebacks since my account began, most of those I assume are fraudulent chargebacks, that it's just someone was like being a butthole and they were like, I don't want Siri to actually get money for this thing that I bought, so I'm going to do a chargeback. Because I don't think it's incredibly likely that many people had their like credit card information stolen over the last couple years. I wasn't born yesterday. So anyway, that's the extra info about chargebacks. Hope that helps. I put the little bit about Lil Tay's recent OF launch in there. Now she's broken every other record for virality. In the first couple hours, she made over $1 million within 3 hours of launching her OF at 12:01 a.m. on the day she turned 18. And I'll talk about that more because I definitely have thoughts there. But for now, let's get back into what I had just introduced, which is the virality, the viral OF content creation style of creators like Bonnie Blue and Annie Knight. To be completely honest, neither of them invented the concept of doing viral, like crazy level sex stunts. That's been a thing in Corn for decades. There's been a lot of like, how many dudes can I do it with in this very short window of time? That has been a thing that has existed in Corn since Corn really has existed. Well, at least, modern commercial Corn. I did one like that. I did a viral stunt back in 2014 for like me and Sarah J. It was called World Cup Team BJ. Me and Sarah J said, if Germany wins the World Cup, we will give BJs to all of our combined followers on Twitter, which was like, several tens of thousands of people at the time. And we actually did the event. We went viral for that. 2014 levels of viral, so very different from now. It's not like TikTok or like Instagram Reels existed. We did this thing called Team BJ, and we did, in fact, do it. It happened. It's on a DVD somewhere. I'm sure you can find. And, yeah, so like, I'm not really going to go that far into like criticizing these stunts that Bonnie Blue and Annie Knight are doing because, I've done the same thing myself. It's always existed in Corn. It's always been an option. It's always been a style of content creation. I don't really see them doing this as a whole lot different from, when I did it back in the day. I will say, especially in the case of Bonnie Blue, because she organized a shoot where she had 1,000 men come shoot a scene with her. Like, I think it's everything I read said that it averaged like 40 seconds per guy. The level of organization and like very intense scheduling and like being on top of stuff that is required to pull that off is actually insane. So if, I honestly respect the work ethic there. That cannot be easy. That being said, I do have some issues with some other stuff that Bonnie Blue has done. She went on Andrew Tate's podcast recently, and I didn't even bother to watch the whole thing. Like, one clip that I saw was her, like, flirting with him.
You're hard right now. I heard they call you Cobra Tate. Are you packing a python?
The only thing I find interesting really about women nowadays, I kind of like to get a woman's heart. More than I like to get her pussy.
Excuse me, the convicted trafficker? You're interested in the heart? Cool story, bro. Okay, and then Annie Knight did a similar thing recently where she had 583 guys all at once come do a scene with her. And then famously she posted right after that she was in the hospital. And she then went on an interview later and spoke out about her hospital trip, because since it happened and she was feeling ill right after the collab event, She did say that it wasn't actually a direct result of that. She had been having some health problems anyway. And then, she's fine now. But that's a little scary. Like, when I saw her post that, I was like, oh shit. Like, but she did clarify that it wasn't anything like STI related, that it was like she was having some other issues like inflammation, which honestly, you don't need, like, that happens with corn performers all the time with women in corn. Our biological, I'm trying to use like very clean language because I don't want YouTube to hate me for talking about this stuff. But yeah, essentially the reproductive system, the female reproductive system, can be highly sensitive at times. I mean, you don't need to, for something to get set off and result in you needing literally even a hospital trip or an urgent care trip, doesn't require you to have intimacy with hundreds of people in a day. So I believe Annie Knight when she says that it wasn't actually directly related to that. It was just the timing of it, I mean, I'm sure maybe the scene she shot didn't really help. But she did clarify that. So that's good for her that she is okay and she's healthy and everything. But I do want to, I'm talking about both these creators because they've both been the subject of a whole lot of hate and backlash because of the viral OF stunt content that they're producing. In that compilation vid I just showed you guys, you did see that part at the very beginning where Bonnie Blue says the thing I'm most known for or most, viral for is shooting content with barely legal 18-year-olds. So there's this thing called Schoolies in Australia where Bonnie Blue lived for a while, which is essentially like freshly graduated high school students that go on like a sort of spring break kind of trip. And so for a while, that was a big part of Bonnie Blue's content production, is she would go to Schoolies and she would just hit up these like freshly 18-year-old boys and shoot content with them. I do have a problem with that. And it is for a pretty specific reason why. And before I get into it, I do want to just say, like, at the top of this, that there has been for a while, and I'm sure there will continue to be, an ongoing conversation in the corn industry about the minimum age to shoot, to become a performer in this industry. The legal age of consent in most places, and especially obviously here in the US, is 18. You're the age of majority at 18. You're a legal adult at 18, which means you can ostensibly do any job when you're 18, including corn or making an OF account. That is what the law says. And so I understand that there are a lot of people who are really disgusted with like the Lil Tay thing. She made an OF as soon as she turned 18. There's a conversation worth having there. What I'm not going to do, though, is entertain the hordes of people who seem to have the argument that, like, it's somehow inherently abusive and bad for any 18-year-old to do this work. This has been happening for as long as there has been places for 18-year-olds to go do any kind of job related to the adult industry. And arguably, I would prefer that someone who's freshly 18, if they want to do that, I would prefer that they go do it safely in an online form than in-person SW, which can be highly risky, which can lead to trafficking situations and human rights abuses. For a long time, and no one ever seemed to have a freaking problem with this, but for the longest time, the only option for an 18-year-old was to go work at a strip club. And I don't really see people complaining about that. I'm sure they've been out there, but it was never like some big cultural movement that people were like, oh, we really gotta make it illegal for the 18-year-olds to work at strip clubs. There's no just very straightforward, simple answer to this. I think that the reason people get their undies in such a bunch about it is because the way that this combination of like younger people and SW is going viral. I think it's the virality that really makes people upset. If we all as a civilization come together and agree that that law should be something else, then we could have a conversation about that. But it's really not useful at all for people to get on their pedestals about like, oh, it's so predatory for any 18-year-old to do this work. Hey, it's Editor Siri again. I just realized I teased that I was going to talk about Bonnie Blue and the problem I have with her schoolies stunts.
What I've gone most viral for is making content with
barely legal 18-year-old.
And then I never got around to it because I guess I just got too distracted by so many other things that were on my list to talk about when I was doing the live stream. So let me actually speak on that now. My problem with Bonnie Blue going viral over shooting scenes with barely legal 18-year-old boys on their little schoolies trip is, to me, that is exploitative of those young men. Correct me if I'm wrong. I did try to look into this, but it doesn't seem to me that those guys are getting paid for their appearances. And there's a really big difference between being an 18-year-old who makes an informed decision of, I want to be an adult content creator. I want to make OnlyFans content professionally, and that's the path that I'm choosing for myself, and I'm going to work hard to like build a brand doing that and doing it, you know, making a choice in sound mind, versus being an 18-year-old, a freshly 18-year-old who's just in the right place at the right time for some viral OF content creator girly to come through and like willy-nilly get you to sign paperwork and perform with her in a scene. I don't know that that is the most informed decision-making process for the young men who have appeared in those scenes with her. You know, I do a lot of collab content. I've done one fan scene that I sell on my OF that I filmed back in 2019, or it was actually technically like January 2020. I still feel conflicted about this because I actually offered to pay the fan and he refused. But I offered to pay him and I was like, but really you should let me like compensate you for this, because I know that for you, this is just your dream come true. But for me, I know I'm going to make a lot of money on this scene. So it doesn't really feel right for me to be the only one that's like banking on it when it's also still your image being disseminated. And, you know, so I have the legal right to sell the scene. I don't even really sell it anymore, because honestly, the paperwork's kind of old and the standards have changed for a lot of websites, so it's a little unreliable to even sell it. But that being said, like in every other arena, when I shoot content that includes any like other talent in it, it's an even exchange in some way, meaning we both sell the scene and we agree on a price to sell it for, so we're both equally able to benefit, ideally. Or if there's a really huge discrepancy, like there have been times that I've shot a scene with talent who's like far lesser known, like they're really new, and I will, you know, try to work something out that's more equitable for them. I don't really have respect for people in this business who have exploitative business practices. And when it comes to Bonnie Blue, for me, that is my biggest criticism of her, is the content that she shoots with barely legal 18-year-old boys, let's be honest, is just inherently exploitative. And yeah, some of that is just about the age. Like, I don't know that a lot of people at that age are mature enough to really make an informed decision about whether they want to appear in adult media. But let's say best case scenario, they are making an informed decision. It's still exploitative because of the amount of money that she's making. She's capitalizing so much on all of this content, and not a single one of those guys is being compensated in any way. And that's something to think about. Lil Tay made $3 million, or $1 million in 3 hours. You know, she broke the record. She's like the only one who's made that much money in that short of a period of time. But I guarantee you there are plenty of people who are not viral about it, that started an OF on their 18th birthday that made a good amount of money. And say what you want about the people you think who are paying for that content. I've seen a lot of people calling the people, you know, whoever's subbing to Lil Tay's OF like predators. But at the end of the day, I take bigger issue with those who are just hating on the women for doing it. Because I think that the real problem for a lot of people is the level of autonomy that women who do this have over the money that they make. Obviously, like, We don't know, in like the case of Lil Tay, we don't know if she's got management. I assume she does. There's no way to confirm that. No one knows for sure at this point. But I would say, based on my experience, I know how a lot of people's pages are run. I've been in this industry for a while. I assume she has management. If you made $1 million in 3 hours, I fucking hope you have management, because that would send my head rolling right off my shoulders if I had that level of traffic to my page. I'd lose my mind. That's like an unmanageable amount for any one human to deal with. So as I was saying, this style of viral content creation, this style of like shock and awe stunt, like viral stunt kind of corn production, this has been around for a while. It's nothing new. I think it's just getting more attention now because of the way that we have social media and just viral content creation in general. It really does incentivize this style of like sexual stunt work, essentially. But a lot of people, when they're trying to engage in debates about the validity of this, they're kind of coming at it from, to me, the wrong direction, because they're not really understanding the incentives behind why a lot of creators do this type of work. The narratives get flattened. It just becomes all about the backlash. It becomes about slut shaming and being angry with certain creators because they're doing it, quote unquote, the wrong way. Ultimately, this criticism and this backlash of creators becomes further ammunition for content platforms, payment processors, and even lawmakers to protect the public by tightening regulations on the content in the case of like payment processors, and by passing laws to further censor content online and censor what creators are allowed to do. The outrage around creators like Bonnie Blue, like Annie Knight, and Lil Tay, it just reinforces these narratives and the systems that honestly make things worse for everyone. The other concept I want to touch on here is the sort of feedback loop of censorship that we're in. Some of you will remember, and probably a lot of you won't, something called FOSTA SESTA. FOSTA SESTA was a set of 2 laws that were written and passed in 2018. So they've been in effect for a while now. FOSTA stands for Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, and SESTA stands for Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act. Essentially, FOSTA and SESTA were passed to modify Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is known as like the free speech clause for the whole internet. The Communications Decency Act came to being in the 90s. It is literally the thing that it made the internet what we know it as, okay? Section 230 just states that for platforms that allow user-generated speech, like user content uploads, user posts, things like message boards, YouTube, any platform that allows users themselves to upload or post their own generated content, Section 230 protects those websites from being held liable criminally or otherwise for the speech of their users. FOSTA and SESTA attacked Section 230 and created a carve-out that said, we will hold these websites liable for the speech of their users if we find that that speech is enabling sex trafficking or promoting prostitution. Since these laws went into effect in 2018, what we have seen is a drastic increase in the censorship of content creators online everywhere, but it's been probably most notable on social media platforms. Literally, FOSTA and SESTA is the reason that when I post something on Instagram, I can't show certain parts of my body. Even, like, obviously, I only would post fully clothed. Like, I'm not a crazy asshole, okay? I only ever post things within the rules, but still, I'm on, I think, my 8th Instagram account now. The reason why I get censored and deleted is directly because of FOSTA SESTA. The reason that they're so strict on content takedowns, on censoring user uploads, and they specifically do target OnlyFans creators. You can't even use the word I can't type the word OnlyFans in anywhere on Instagram. I can't put it in a caption. If I say it at all, I have to like completely censor it. I'm even too afraid to say OF. I will use the number 0 and then an F, because even the OF part is like targeted for censoring by them. And this is directly a result of FOSTA SESTA, because what that law did is it said to Instagram and Meta and Twitter and every other platform, every website, if we think that a user on your platform is advertising prostitution or participating some way in sex trafficking, you will literally be sued into oblivion, and you will be held liable for like millions and millions and millions of dollars in criminal fines and in damages. So that gives these platforms all of the incentive to just say, oh, we're not even going to touch that. Anything that even has just the slightest little whiff of someone doing sex work, even if it's legal, even if it's porn, which is completely legal, which is covered by the First Amendment, it's protected by law. It doesn't matter, because they created the incentive for these things to be censored. That's the legacy of FOSTA SESTA. It's pretty disgusting, honestly. Here's another article. U.S. anti-trafficking law putting sex workers and trafficking survivors in danger. This is like from one of the main anti-trafficking organizations, okay? One of the ones that's actually anti-trafficking and not like Exodus Cry, where they're fake anti-trafficking because they're just actually anti-corn, but they use anti-trafficking language, but really all they want to do is just make corn illegal. This isn't that. This is a real one. Passed in 2018, FOSTA SESTA is purportedly a piece of anti-trafficking legislation that has come under intense criticism for measures in the legislation that put sex workers at increased risk of trafficking and exploitation. Under the law, online websites are held liable for promoting or facilitating prostitution or sex trafficking. In practice, this means that websites can be sued for users mentioning sex work or trafficking, and website owners face long prison terms if found guilty. For many websites, the risk of litigation is too high, leading to blanket bans on anything related to sex work and preventing sex workers from operating safely online. A 2020 study of the effects of FOSTA SESTA found that 72.5% of sex workers had faced economic instability since the law's introduction. In San Francisco, the number of street-based sex workers tripled in 2018, and there was a 170% increase in human trafficking cases. CBS said that both spikes appeared to be connected to the federal shutdown of sex-for-sale websites. So directly as a result of FOSTA SESTA, websites like Backpage and the Craigslist like personals ad section were targeted. I mean, Backpage was fully raided by the feds and completely shut down, and the owners of the site were prosecuted and have like literally served time. Was Backpage allowing sex workers to post advertisements for their work online? Yes, it was. Were some of those ads probably placed by people who were doing trafficking? Yes. But Backpage was also cooperating with the feds to help them find the traffickers. Essentially, it worked like a net to catch the traffickers in. So when they shut down Backpage, they lost the net that they were using to catch the actual traffickers. They lost the ability to have the owners of that website cooperate with the FBI and with law enforcement to actually find and prosecute people running trafficking operations. Literally, the result of FOSTA SESTA is that it made trafficking harder to identify, harder to prosecute. And not only that, but then all the people who are doing it consensually, who could no longer place ads, could no longer like really exist safely online, were then forced to do riskier forms of the work where they're, working on the street or having to honestly enter into more of a trafficking kind of situation in order to receive protection in exchange, because they were no longer safe to advertise their own stuff online and work independently. There have been so many studies by now that have come out, like study after study, and it's been several years, 7 years since it came out, and it still hasn't been overturned because they don't care. Because these laws are not actually intended to prevent trafficking. Back to our the censorship feedback loop that I'm talking about. So now that you guys know everything, hopefully you understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about FOSTA and SESTA and why they're bad and they suck. I've talked about the risks to people who do other forms of SW, but let's specifically talk about linking this back into the viral thing, viral OF content creators, etc. Back before FOSTA SESTA was passed, like I remember when I was newer to the industry, when I could post on Instagram, I could freely post on Twitter and things. And still, I would follow those platforms' rules, like no nudity allowed, I don't post nudity. Nothing explicit allowed, I don't post that. I don't push the boundary. I'm not trying to get banned. But I could at least, like, you know, use normal words like a normal human and not have to use algo speak or put myself at risk of being permabanned. That's no longer the case now. Also, the shadow banning got so bad after FOSTA SESTA was passed that anyone who is like an adult model or, you know, a corn performer, or later on once OF became a thing, an OF creator, not only do you have to use this algo speak language, but you're so shadow banned that you can't get any organic reach on the platform. So what's the solution to building your audience? You have to go viral. So this is just actually increased the incentive for creators to do increasingly crazy ass things to just try to go viral. It's all about how can you generate the most views possible. And now we're just in this demonic fucking cycle of like every Instagram model who also does OF just making increasingly unhinged viral content, because that's what we've all been forced into doing. If FOSTA SESTA were never passed, I guarantee you we would not be in this boat. Like, the attempts to censor SW online has directly resulted in the situation of creators like Bonnie Blue and Annie Knight doing crazy ass stunts to go viral. It is you can draw a direct line from one to the other. Of course, then all this viral content continues to spark the moral panic. People are freaking out. They're like, why is it every girl's dream now to be an OF model? Like, OF detected, opinion rejected. I'm so disgusted with all these e-thoughts putting their bodies on display just to make money. Like, why don't you get a real job? All the viral content just sparks more and more moral panic. This moral panic, in turn, justifies more censorship. I can't even tell you how many times amongst the last 3 years of me screaming online about censorship and warning people about, you know, Project 2025 says that they're going to outright ban corn. They said that their way they're trying to ban it is by passing all these age verification laws. I am ringing the warning bell, and what do I get back from a bunch of my followers online? Well, things have gone too far anyway, so maybe we actually need this. Maybe it's good if we ban corn, because I don't like the fact that all these girls want to be OF models. Like, maybe it's good if we just ban it. You know, people buying into the false narrative that corn is addictive, which has been debunked many, many, many times. Algorithms reward shock value and oversharing of information, even though the platforms that we're all forced to use in order to survive, in order to make money on the one platform, you know, well, it's not just the one. I mean, OF is the biggest one, but obviously there's Fansly, there's Loyal Fans, there's other platforms. I'm just going to address them all as like one thing because they're conceptually all the same. But even as the safer work platforms punish us for this content, we don't really have a choice. I'd be interested to see what Instagram's engagement metrics look like if we were to completely remove all the OF content creators from the platform. If we woke up tomorrow and every single OF content creator was completely gone from the platform, I'd be interested to see what that looked like. I'd be interested to see how that affects Instagram's bottom line, because a lot of what drives engagement on that platform is the existence of OF creators who are forced to be hyperactive on that platform, who are forced to make content every day to engage with their, you know, hundreds of thousands or even millions of fans. And it's all in the name of just driving the traffic somewhere else that we're not even allowed to talk about on Instagram. The effect of all of this is honestly pretty tragic. We're losing free speech. We're losing a sense of safety online, and we are losing our ability to have nuanced conversations around this stuff. The public attitude shifting in favor of censorship, in favor of age verification laws, payment processor restrictions and platforms having stricter rules on adult content. All of these public attitudes, they go hand in hand with actual policy measures. The flattened narratives, I keep going back to the OF detected, opinion rejected, completely erases the diversity of experience among all different kinds of SWs. And it's also just very obviously misogynistic. Essentially, that's saying the fact that you've chosen to do any form of SW means that you're worth nothing more as a human being. Your opinions don't matter. Your political takes don't matter. Whether you're the subject of censorship, of controversy, of physical harm and oppression, none of that matters because you have an OF. I think most normal, sane people don't think that way, but it has become such a common refrain that unfortunately I really do feel like it's like normalized at this point, to the degree that I do just see a lot of people who otherwise, like, if I met them in real life and we just sat down and had a conversation, I feel like they genuinely would like respect me as a person. But if they saw me online first and they were initially aware that I like do OF as my main job, then they would never give me the time of day. It's just a really honestly sad and tragic flattening of the narrative of like how this stuff works, and it's dehumanizing. This also has caused us to lose any nuance around conversations of policies that are being enacted, ostensibly in order to protect kids from harm. Things like the age verification laws that have been now passed in 24 states. These laws do more to protect corporate control over speech than they do to protect actual kids from any harm on the internet. These laws essentially provide carte blanche to mega tech companies to restrict any speech that they do not like under the guise of it protects kids. This is censorship being sold to you as safety, but it does in fact just erode free speech, it erodes autonomy, and it causes direct harm to the economic security of a lot of people, not just SWs, but people who work in other industries that are just essentially the collateral damage when these laws get passed. A lot of these laws are also being used to censor information about reproductive rights, about access to reproductive health resources in states that have very strict anti-abortion laws, etc. All of these things are being classed as corn in states that have age verification laws, specifically just so they can filter them out, so they can make them inaccessible to as many people as possible. Moreover, like the stereotype of what an OF content creator is, the stereotype of what a worker is, has become so like flattened, which is so surprising because you don't have to look that hard to find the diversity in it. One of the things that actually is great about this kind of content creation that has changed the adult industry for the better is the fact that like you're your own business when you do this. You can look like anything. Back when I first started in the corn industry, OF didn't exist. It was only studio work. And there were a lot of studios that would never hire me because I was, as they thought, I guess, too fat. It was very limiting. I had to fight tooth and nail to be included in opportunities that other women not that different from me would get easily, just because of me having a slightly different body type. So it's kind of nuts to see, especially like I'm trying to not make this like a generational battle thing, but I would really be amiss if I didn't specifically call out the fact that a lot of this like flattening of narratives is in fact coming from younger people who have, grown up, and most of their existence online has taken place in the era of like post TikTok, post COVID kind of times, people who came of age like since Trump's first presidency. For that reason, they've honestly never known an internet before Fosta Sesta. They've never known an internet before TikTok virality. So I understand that all of this sucks and it's frustrating, but that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm trying to explain, and I'm hoping some of my whatever younger fans I do have, I don't think I actually have that many fans who are like Gen Z, but if I do, and if you're watching, it hasn't always been this way. And in fact, the existence of platforms like OF has been great for autonomy, for the well-being and the earning potential of workers in my industry. It's helped a lot. Things have gotten so much better. One of the things that really chafes my taint is when people say that OF is inherently exploitative. I got in an argument in the comment section of some random person's Instagram the other day because someone who was literally, she was 20, and I know this because it was in her bio. She mentioned that she's 20. She was like a super duper swerf, and she was using the most just like patronizing tone with me. Like, oh, it's just so pathetic that you're exploiting yourself and you're totally unaware of it. Like, you have no self-awareness. And I just wanted to be like, oh my God, you fucking child. You want to hear about exploitation? When I was brand new to the corn industry, because back when I started, the only way you could get work is by hiring an agent. And almost all the agents were like middle-aged men. The first agent I ever had, I was only with him for like 6 months, and then I fired him. And the way I got out of my contract was I had to threaten to take his ass to the labor board, to report him to the labor board in California, because he was abusive and he was breaking like every labor law. Talent agents, talent management in California, because this entertainment industry is a big industry here, there are very strict laws that you have to follow as a talent agent. And if you do not follow them, you'll get fined millions of dollars and you'll lose your license. And I had to threaten to take this guy to the labor board to get out of my contract because he didn't like me personally. So when a producer would call and say, I want to book Siri for a scene, my agent, whose job it is to book me for a scene, would lie and say, she's not available. You know who is available on that day? Alexis Texas or whoever. He would recommend someone else that he liked instead of me. So I was losing a bunch of work because my agent was lying and saying I was unavailable. Like, you want to talk about manipulative, abusive, and shitty people in the industry? There are plenty. And fortunately, specifically because OF exists, those people have been driven out. That agent that I fired, there was a class action lawsuit against him. He lost his license. And I guarantee you the reason all of that happened is because the women who ended up suing him in a class action felt comfortable doing it because thanks to websites like OF, they had the ability to earn income on their own. They didn't have to rely on an agent anymore. This is a Twitter thread that I saw that made me laugh so hard, dude. Are you guys ready for this? This is unhinged. Every single thing this dude says is a complete and total lie. The 5 biggest lies of corn, according to this random guy on Twitter. He says that orgasms are added during the editing. He says 95% of the sounds are added out in post-production, and that actresses wear earbuds so they don't have to hear their own phony sounds. It's also like when he says this stuff, it also just purely doesn't make any sense based on the sheer fact of like, how can you, when you reference like 95% of scenes, it's like you realize that the majority of corn that exists at this point is definitely like self-produced stuff. Like there's, with the volume of people making their own content and selling it on OF and similar platforms, like if you were to just do like a raw count of the number of corn scenes that exist that are available on the internet, like I guarantee you that the majority of them at this point are like self-filmed. And I also guarantee you that OF girlies are not adding their moans in post. Dude, this thread has so many retweets. People actually believe this. Look at this. 46K likes, 25K bookmarks, 5.8 thousand retweets. I mean, some of those might just be people retweeting because they think it's funny because it's so fucking unhinged, but who knows? Also, by the way, like I'm just going to scroll past this, but yes, he did make this thread in order to advertise his like grifty ass anti-corn abstinence app. We won't be talking about that. What contractions do you see? Mechanical Kegel exercises? I'm a person with a uterus, a vulva, and a pelvic floor. Like, I am a cisgender woman, and I know what a Kegel is. But I can tell you, I don't know what the fuck a mechanical Kegel is, because that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. I'm not a robot. I don't have a robot uterus. I can't mechanically Kegel. What is he talking about? Editor Siri here again. I actually did look this up because I was like, I mean, I feel like they're probably like maybe mechanical is just referring to Kegel exercise devices, which it is in fact referring to devices. There's different kinds of devices to exercise your pelvic floor if it's weak or if you just, need strengthening or you want to do it for fun, I guess, such as, Kegel balls. I have Kegel balls. That's a common one. But this still, my opinion still stands because this guy seems to be implying that corn stars are using mechanical Kegel exercise devices inside themselves while they're shooting a scene, and that wouldn't work. That would be very physically uncomfortable, and that wouldn't work. I don't think this guy who wrote this thread has ever had sex. Also, he posts sources, which is like, this doesn't exist. He says source adult industry medical report. That's not a thing. FYI. He's straight up is making this up. He's inventing this. Whole cloth, just inventing it out of thin fucking air. Number 2, they use drugs to keep going. What you see, natural pleasure. Before each shoot, a cocktail of painkillers, anti-anxiety medications, and stimulants is administered. I love the passive voice here. Is administered by whom? Anybody's guess. It's administered by the corn industry czar, who's magically present at all times on every set, in every production, across the whole world. He's like Santa. He has magical time travel capabilities. And instead of a sack full of presents, he carries a sack full of painkillers, anti-anxiety medications, and stimulants. 87% utilize drugs to always perform. That is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. Also, the fact that the clip he's posted here, you know who that is, y'all? That is Sterling Cooper. Sterling Cooper is one of the worst people to have ever disgraced the corn industry with his presence. He can't perform. He can't do the job. I shot one scene with the guy and we had to cut about 50 times. His ween doesn't really work at all, even though I'm sure he had taken, a Blue Chew or whatever. He's not capable of doing the job. And clearly he's salty about that because he kind of got edged out of the industry because of not being good as a performer. And, there's some grace allowed for that. Like, there are plenty of guys who, like, maybe they take a little longer, but they're fun to work with. They're respectful, and the ladies love them. So you'll get a pass if you're, like, not always on top of your stuff. But if you're also just a shitty person and you can't perform well, you stand no chance of having a career in the industry. So he kind of just stopped getting work. And I just love that he's being used as a source of information for this crazy anti-corn thread. Potentially the most unreliable source you could possibly choose. Oh, we're not done talking about the Drogas. The white horse provides energy. Xanax. Morphine? Jesus Christ. Most addictions begin before the age of 25. Source, Performers Health Study 2021. Also, again, a fake source that doesn't exist. 3, the positions are impossible. What you see are smooth, acrobatic positions. In actuality, 73%. That's such a specific... You can see how he's making up the numbers because he chooses very, specifically random numbers. 73%. Okay? Do you believe me now? If I said 70%, you might not believe me that they're all, impossible positions. But now I'm calling it 73%. So so it's plausible. 73% of positions are hardly more than 30 seconds long with 5 to 10 minute pauses between shots. No. I mean, I don't see why he cares about this. This one is like the weirdest one to me because, like, why do you give a hoot what the positions are? The positions are decided by the people filming the scene. So if you think the positions look too crazy, like, watch something else. Every scene doesn't have crazy positions. Some performers like really like to show off. They're big show offs and they like to do weird stuff and like be acrobatic and like extra about it. And yeah, some of those positions, if they're really hard to hold, if they're like, or just particularly physically intense, like, yeah, they might last for like a minute or two and then you cut. But I've never been on a set and I've never met anyone else who's been on a set where you're filming your scenes in 30-second spurts with 5 to 10 minute pauses. That's crazy. That doesn't sound like creating a corn scene. That sounds like me doing my powerlifting sets. I'm doing, a 3-rep max on squat and I complete the 3 reps in 30 seconds and then I rest for 10 minutes between sets. Oh my God, wait, this is my favorite. Invisible cushions support their bodies. Assistants maintain their legs in position while off camera. Like when you go to the gynecologist. We have human assistant stirrups and invisible cushions. 4 hours of shooting yields 20 minutes of smooth video. This man also doesn't understand how video editing works as a concept if he thinks that 30-second blips will actually result in a smooth video that looks like it has like good transitions and not the choppiest bullshit ever. After each shoot, there's mandatory stretching and physiotherapy. Mandatory? I mean, I'd suggest stretching and some physiotherapy afterward, but if it's mandatory, I missed that memo. I've never been instructed, on threat of death to stretch and do physiotherapy after a scene. They're wearing makeup everywhere. What you see is perfect skin with natural portions. The reality. 3 hours of makeup for each sequence, including the genitals. Foundation to hide irritation, gloss to make it shine, and even false lashes for intimate regions. 91% of surgery scars are concealed with makeup. Source, Adult Makeup Artists Union. So I know that's wrong because there's no such thing as the Adult Makeup Artists Union. Like, that doesn't exist at all. There's no union for makeup artists who work in the adult industry. There never has been, as far as I'm aware. False lashes for intimate regions. I don't think this guy's first language is English, so I kind of think that he might be trying to imply that, like, we're all wearing merkins, that, like, the bushes are fake, and it's, like, glue on pubes or something. But I do love the visual idea of, like, me having fake lashes glued on my labia. 5. The entire arousal is fake. What you see, a spontaneous yearning. The reality is that they use eye drops to make their eyes shine. Apply Vaseline on the lips to simulate saliva. Warming gels produce natural redness. The fake wetness method uses glycerin and water to simulate female desire. During filming, here we go, another hyper-specific fake number. 89% of the subjects are never aroused. Yeah, so that's the end of that thread. God, it's so horrific. I hate it so much. It's hard to believe that it's not actually satirical because it's so completely unhinged. Like, I genuinely cannot believe that thread has that many likes and retweets and bookmarks. That, like, people read that and they think it's real. They think it's correct information, and that's crazy. That's crazy as hell. If you haven't yet, please do click the thumbs up button so you like my stream. Follow my channel if you haven't already. Make sure you're following. And you can click the bell if you want to get notifications in the future when I go live. Put September 4th on your calendar for Corn Telethon. I'll be live for Corn Telethon. I and we, like all 100 people who are involved in the production, will be live on this YouTube channel on September 4th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific time for Corn Telethon numero dos. All right, bye-bye, y'all. Have a great night, everyone.